Ladies and gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, what's going on YouTube? I got a very, very special guest today, Rich from UTech USA. I'm quite sure he doesn't need any introduction. You know who he is. We're going to talk about a few things here. Gaming, what got him into gaming, what was his favorite generation, favorite console of all times, how has it been on YouTube, doing it full time. You know what I mean? Shout out to everybody in the chat. You guys would be so kind to tweet it out. I know it's been a little glad you waiting, but it wasn't me. Believe it, the first time I was on time today. I'll be running on black man's time. My man Rich was late. But it's all good. He showed up and I appreciate it. So Rich.
What's up, man? How you doing?
I'm good. You're a new father, channel's growing. You get a new office. Like, talk to me. What's going on?
It's been a hell of a few months because it was like a trifecta move. It wasn't just us moving out. It was me moving into an office where we were moving to the people that moved out that we got the house from. They took a long time to move out. Yeah, so sure. It was like 3 moves in one. It wasn't just me moving into a new place. So it was like 3 big moves at once. So it was stressful, man. That's why like in August and even September, I didn't put up that much content.
Okay. All right. Well, like I said, I stumbled upon YouTube about 2012. You were already full swing, but was it within 2012 or 2013? You said, "Hey, I'm going to take this thing here full time." And like I said, I just mentioned to you behind the scenes, like you got a lot of hate for that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it was weird. Well, here's the thing: like I got laid off. I used to work at IBM back in 2009. Yes. I got laid off in 2009, and honestly, ever since then, I got jobs, but they were like either part-time or not making enough. And I sat down and did the math and I realized that I could do more, which I never thought would have happened, but I can make more doing YouTube
full-time
and do full-time than I would make at the job I was at. I was employed at the time. And people lost their minds, like, who quits a job to do YouTube and blah, 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 blah. And here I am way over 4 years after that, still doing it, and it worked out. I mean, it was a risk. I'll not, they were right with that, because who knows? I could have fell flat on my face, but it worked out. I got very lucky. I'm very thankful for that.
For sure, man. That's what's up, man. Well, like I said, question: what got you into gaming? I've seen the video, but some of the people maybe I doubt they're new to your content. But what got you into gaming? Your first console?
Oh God,
was it Atari, the NES? What?
It was. My dad had an Atari, and he back then, this is back in like the 80s, he had a cartridge that had a slot that you put the chips in, the EEPROMs in. He actually was pirating games back in the 80s, and he had like a Pitfall and everything on there. That's what got me into gaming. And then he got me a Coleco. After Coleco took a shit, they were going under. He got a Coleco for dirt cheap, and I remember playing Donkey Kong on there, and I was maybe 3 when I first started gaming, and I've been gaming since. What really got me into it was when I got the NES when I was 5 years old for Christmas, and since then, I mean, there were a couple times where I had dips, like I always talk about in my videos, where, I kind of got out of gaming for a little bit, but generally I would say 90% of my life I've been a gamer.
Oh, okay. Me, myself, the first count. Oh, you went out. Hello?
I'm here.
Oh, you went out for a minute. Me, myself, I'm 39. I think I'm a few years older than you, Rich. I remember the ColecoVision. I remember the Atari. But it was the NES. At the time, my husband's, Jesus Christ. My uncle's wife, brother at the time, little Johnny, he had a NES, and I played a Sight Bite for the first time, and then Mario. And then that year, for Christmas, my grandmother went down to the Wiz or the Crazy Eddie's. Well, he was Crazy Eddie's.
Crazy Eddie's, holy shit! I haven't heard that name in a while.
Yeah, that was a long time ago. And I got the NES with the gun, the Gyromite, the Duck Hunt. The 3-in-1. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I had the Gyromite too. I used it like twice, and that was it. But yes, I had that.
It was horrible. It was very, very horrible. Like I got that for Christmas. That was 3 games. You counted your games back. I had the little black sleeve. I had pro wrestling. Something else. I think it's Sight Bite, either Kung Fu, but that was it. And I had those same 5 or 6 games to the following Christmas of next year.
It was. I remember. God, I had when I first got the NES. I got Balloon Fight. I got Kung Fu, and a game called Gumshoe. I didn't actually like Gumshoe that much. I remember my mom actually played that and beat that. But
Gumshoe's pretty bad. I remember. Oh, I had Urban Fighter. Remember Urban Fighter?
Yeah, I played the hell out of that game. Was a bad game. That game was terrible, but I played the hell out of that as a kid. That was like the pre Street Fighter, but it was like one of the most repetitive games on the planet. But yeah, man, I had that.
Yeah, I had Urban. But anyway, like I said, that. Well, all right, so that was I don't know, maybe 88, 87, 88. Next console after that, Sega Master System, because my best friend had the Sega Master System, and I will say this: Sega did have better graphics back then, but you know, Nintendo was the household name to me. Like Sega didn't get really popular till the Genesis came out. Did you get the Sega Master System, or
I did? You know, it was funny. My friend had it, and yeah, the games looked better, and that's what made me want it. And I got it for Christmas. But the thing was, is it didn't have the games, and the reason the reason it didn't was because Nintendo had a shady business practice where they basically had a stranglehold on developers. But yeah, that's what killed it. Is that the game, it had no games, it just had the first party stuff from Sega.
They were strong though. They were strong. They had the Rocky Balboa, Hogan's Alley.
I played Shinobi a lot. I had Shinobi for the Sega Master System. I played that a lot. That was a good port. That was a good port for that. I had that, but that was the problem, is there was no games, because the fact that Nintendo basically said, you make a game for our they had them under contract. You made a game for our console. You couldn't make a game. I think it was like for 5 years. I could be wrong about the years, but for like 5 years, you couldn't make a game for another piece of hardware. So they had the most consoles out there. So what were developers going to do? They were going to make games for the NES where the money was. So, but yeah, I had the light gun, man. My friend had for the Sega Master System. He had the glasses, the 3D glasses when you play. Like, I didn't have that.
They did have the glasses. My friend had them, and they didn't work. I didn't get the Sega Master. It didn't work sometime.
He had it. I tried it, and it was like I didn't get it either. I didn't see the 3D, but he had them, and I remember the card games.
You know, half the audience know what the hell we're talking about right now. You know that, right?
No, yeah, because they're like, what are these old men talking about right now? But they had the card games too. Remember they had that almost like
Hogan Alley was on the card. If I'm not mistaken, that was on the card.
There was no. What did I have on a card? It was like some space shooter I had in a card, man. That was, God, you're going back now to like 86, 87. No, that was a long time ago. But yeah, I had. But I had all the systems, man. I was a spoiled kid.
I got a question for you. One of they've been asking me in the chat. I didn't tell any people you were coming on because, you know, you're busy. And I didn't hound you about it. What was your favorite between the NES or the Sega Masters or the Sega Genesis? What was your favorite? Who you say was, like, you know, the Genesis? The NES.
I would say I had more. That's a tough one because it was like the NES is what, but I would say I had more fun. Maybe because I was a little older too with the Genesis than I did with the NES. I had a ton of games and I love the NES, but when I really think about it, I actually think I enjoy the Genesis more. I know
I would say the same thing. The Genesis, maybe I'm gonna be honest, maybe because I had the NES on a black and white TV. I got the Genesis. When I got my Genesis, I had a color TV. I got it in my 7th grade.
Well, of course you're gonna like the Genesis better.
You know what I mean? Ultra Beast, the Golden X, like those graphics was just like, and you can plug your headphones into the console. But listen, it's funny that you said that, right? Because I've seen you and for whatever reason they paid me as the Nintendo zealot. I hate Nintendo Nazi, but I tell people all the time it's Nintendo that got me into gaming. Like I've always stated that. And I remember a time when Nintendo had all of the third-party support. Like some of their best games were not made by Nintendo.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, The Simpsons, so many different games. Double Dragon, Rain King, I can go on and on. So many great memories that I had. Like I said, they were not made by Nintendo.
Not at all.
And to see where they are now, like I said, they're former shell of themselves. When I look at Nintendo, maybe you may feel different when I ask you this. I look at them as being the grandfather of gaming. And I don't understand, or the godfather, we want to call it, and they're just so far behind the curve. You know what I mean? It just refused to, I want to say, compete. And the people tell me, well, next gen, Nintendo's never been about graphics. I said, what are you talking about? The Nintendo 64? The GameCube, Nintendo does with Sega. You know, you remember all that stuff. You know what I mean?
I got that one part. I'm 100% on board with you with that. I was around when they were competing with Sega, and you know they had to play it loud, and they were all about talking about graphics. On the Super Nintendo, the N64, they had demos upon demos upon demos, just talking about the visuals and how their 3D was better than PlayStations and blah, blah,
it was more powerful.
They're on YouTube. It's like, I'm not making it up. I've shown videos on YouTube of them talking about how they're working with silicon graphics on the N64, even with the GameCube to a point.
It was more powerful.
It was more powerful than the PS2. It was not as powerful as the Xbox, the original Xbox. It was in between. But they always tried to be. It wasn't until the Wii that they were like, all right, we're going to try a different direction. So that's why I'm always like scratching my head when people are like, no, Nintendo was never about powerful hardware. I'm like, yeah, they were.
Yeah, you know what I mean? And I didn't realize at the time. I found out that the Wii, believe it or not, was an attachment, supposed to be an attachment for the GameCube. You know what I mean? I didn't realize how underpowered the Wii was, and I mean, like that was really, really, and that's why I kind of fell out of I won't say out of love, but I just didn't the Wii. Then I got the Wii U. And my problem with the Wii U, and I think what most people, you know, the last generation, it lasted a very, very long time. You know, 9 years, very unhealthy for gaming. You know what I mean? Very unhealthy as far as tech wise. And then when the Wii U came out, people were waiting for the next. And listen, I always say this: I'm not talking about specs on paper, to my real world performance. We were expecting to see a leap to compare to what the 360 and the PS3 was, and it just wasn't there. And then me myself, like I felt a little restricted because when I got the Wii, I bought all the multiplats that came out for it. Wii U, I'm sorry, and I couldn't do the basic things that I've been used to doing with the original, like join session in progress. You know, you know, the slow stuff. You know what I mean? Voice chat, man.
Themselves in a weird spot with the Wii U. The funniest thing I always say is I actually like the Wii U better than the Wii. So it was kind of sad for everyone to see it was a miserable. It was their second most miserable failure next to the Virtual Boy. But it was just they put themselves in a weird position because they didn't know it wasn't as it was a little bit more powerful than the 7th gen consoles, the 360 and PS3. It wasn't as powerful as the PS4 and Xbox One. And developers like, what the hell do we do with this thing then? Because they couldn't just make the game straight and port them over to Wii U.
And it was like a DirectX 10 equivalent or something too. You know what I mean? And then
it wasn't doing anything with DirectX 11. It wasn't doing anything with it. So it was like it was just a system that was lost. And Nintendo did a horrible job marketing it. They did not know how to market. People, like I always say again and again, years after that system came out, were saying, "Oh, is the Wii U an add-on for the Wii?" Like the naming was bad, the marketing was bad, the hardware wasn't powerful enough, and that's why it was just a mess.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, I mean, again, like I said, you've been very, how you say, supportive of the Nintendo Switch. I'm still on the fence about it. I'm gonna say I want to come back and visit this conversation in a year. You know, once because I know that the Mario's came out was doing well. They already released Zelda. They already released Mario Kart. I think it's going to be a while before Metroid hit. And I look at it, and maybe I'm thinking maybe you may feel different. I look at it as maybe no different from the Wii U because they put out in all honesty, it is a 9th generation console. And I wouldn't have a problem really with the Switch, but Reggie said that himself that this is not a successor to the 3DS. They're going to come out with this, you know, I guess a successor. What I would think would be stupid. They kind of lost their own market there.
I kind of feel the same way. Yeah,
you know what I mean. But they put out a next generation console that can't run really any the next generation games. Like, you know, you have how you say you get exclusive once every 3 to 4 months, but you get the AAA, you know, not the Grand Theft Auto, what do you call it? The Star Wars Battlefronts, and that's the holds you over to the next exclusive. Like, how do you feel? Well, I'll give you an example, right? You just had a child, right?
Mm-hmm.
My daughter, she does all her game, believe it or not, on the tablet. Everything's tablet.
Yeah, it is.
And she doesn't really know much about Mario. And I have a son, believe it or not, he's 21, who first console was the GameCube. I got him, that was his first console. By the following year, the year after, he was online. He had kind of outgrown the whole Nintendo phase. And I've always had the saying, like, I've grown up with Nintendo, but I feel as though Nintendo hasn't grown up with me. I would love to see a more mature Zelda, you know, Link, you know what I mean, taking heads off or something, you know what I mean? Because I look at it like this, Nintendo, what they do, they cater to that one demographic very well, you know what I mean? And I look at it maybe as a niche audience, but I don't see the casual. What I mean by that, putting down their Call of Duties and Madden just to play $300 to play Mario. How do you feel about that? Or
well, here is the thing that I'm seeing with the Switch, and I thought the Switch was going to be in trouble, and I was wrong. Is that it seemed like Nintendo learned from the big fat L they took with the Wii U, and now, and let me tell you something, man. I've been playing the crap out of Doom for the Switch.
Okay.
And what I'm seeing is, it's not going to be as pretty as the PS4 version. And it's not. It's not going to be as pretty as the Xbox One version, especially now with the X out.
Yes.
But it's a solid port. I'm playing it in my hands. and I'm enjoying it there. And it doesn't even look that, it's not, obviously doesn't look as good as a PS4 and Xbox One version or PC version. And then you can dock it too at the same time. So they what they're doing, it seems like Nintendo finally realized, and we'll see what happens in a year. Let's hope it keeps up. They seem to be now courting third-party developers, because I don't think we would have seen a Doom even whittled down on like the Wii U. And and now they have like, okay, yes, which there's a point there. I hear what people are saying, and they're not wrong. They're bringing a game like Skyrim over, or they're like, all right, Rich, like Skyrim has been on a fucking potato, like, you know what I'm saying? But it's still a different Nintendo. And what they've done with the Switch is they've given something that the other competitors can't give, is that, yeah, you could take it with you too. And I got to say, man, I was very scared. I was excited, but I was like, how the hell are they going to get Doom to work on basically a tablet with controllers?
It runs what, 30 frames or something? Or
it runs at 30 frames.
Handheld doesn't really matter, probably.
Which I got to say, which I was concerned about, because look, man, I have a beast PC, and I could get this beyond 60 frames per second.
Yeah.
But whatever they did, whatever magic they did to port it over to the Switch, it still feels almost as responsive. I wouldn't say it feels as responsive as 60 plus frames per second, because I would be lying. But it doesn't feel like the Killzone effect. You know what I'm talking? You ever play Killzone, where it feels like you feel like your hands are in molasses as you're playing? It doesn't have that. So if Nintendo keeps that up, they could have a market where they're like, all right, you could buy the same AAA game in our system. It may not be 4K. It may not be this, but you could take it with you and you could play it at home.
Okay, now I'm gonna look at it as sorry for me being a little pessimist. I'm looking at it as maybe the glass half empty, right?
That's fine.
I look at it like I think it still raises the issue when developers have to go out of their way, you understand, to shoehorn something in, or and I get the whole mobile aspect of it, right? But I also look at it just like not everybody can afford multiple consoles, right? There are more ways. You, myself, and the people that are watching this show here are the hardcore. You know what I mean? What when we go out and keep up with the news, go out and get a couple games a year. But you do have a much bigger audience that only will get the Call of Duties, the Madden, the 2K, maybe the Battlefield, the Destiny, and that's about it. You know what I mean? What I mean by that is you look at Sony's biggest exclusive this year was Horizon Zero Dawn, right? They have an install base of almost 70 million. 3 million people bought the game, which is big, you know what I mean? But compare that 3 million to what Destiny is going to sell, what Star Wars is going to sell, you know what I mean? Or what NBA or Madden, sold on the platform. So I look at it like this again, and I still look at the Switch as still, like I said, appealing to the die-hard gamers and not so much the casual. But I don't see a casual going out and paying $300 just to play Mario. They can't get their duty on the new one that's coming out. They're not going to be able to get the what do you call it, Star Wars Battlefront, the Destiny 2s. You know what I mean? That's the way I look at it. You know what I mean? Like a little limbo. I mean, I look at like all new hardware sells at first. You know what I mean? It was something new, a breath of fresh air. But like I said, maybe a year from now, because they already put out a Mario, they already dropped the Zelda, they already put out Mario Kart. Now, and listen, you said they came out of the gate firing on all cylinders, right? When the Wii U launched, they released with a bunch of multiplats that no one bought. I remember I bought it, and I remember Dr. Trey's, all your favorite games or stuff he was doing, right? And I remember Need for Speed and Injustice. So Need for Speed so 19,000 for the month, and Justice did like 20K for the month. You know what I mean? And with this, they put
but see, there wasn't that sell the Switch. The Switch. Listen, the Wii U.
Yes,
it was kind of like there was no selling point to it. Like, okay, you have an LCD screen on your gamepad, right? So I might, if it reaches far enough, be able to play a game while I'm taking a shit. There wasn't, you actually had a downgrade in visuals. You didn't have the same online support. You didn't have this. Whereas the Switch, I'm seeing Nintendo being more aggressive, which is good, because I was afraid they weren't going to be. And you've seen my channel. I've been critical as fuck of Nintendo. It's not that I'm dick riding them by any means, but that it just seems like this time because it was funny with the Wii U when they came out and mentioned the Wii U, when they announced the Wii U back in E3 2011. This is when Nintendo still did regular E3 press conferences.
Yes,
they were like, "Oh, we're going to be all about the third party and this and that," and they showed like Metro Last Light and this. And then when the system dropped, it was like, yeah, we're relying. Like, it was like they came out. EA had a couple half-ass ports. That was the problem too, is that ports. Well, okay, I guess you could say FIFA would be a good argument. FIFA 18 for the Switch is pretty shitty, but all the ports seemed like when they came out for the Wii U, they were just always like a cut below, like the 360 version. Your console technically was more powerful than the Wii U version, even though it should have had prettier visuals. The only game I ever saw that looked better on the Wii U as a multi-plat compared to the 360 and PS3 was Black Ops 2, but it had no online support and no DLC, so no one played online. But all the games didn't look as good. And there was and they weren't even full ports. So like people were like, why am I buying games for the system? You know, and whereas the Switch, they're trying to give a reason to, and I think, well, you know what'll happen is this holiday season will be the testing grounds.
This one or next one? No, they did have Mario. Mario's big. Mario's huge for them.
Well, I'm talking third-party developers though. They're all testing the waters right now. You have Bethesda, like, all right, we're going to drop Doom and Skyrim. Let's see how they sell. You're going to have Rockstar, which is crazy seeing them coming back on board because Rockstar is minus they had the Chinatown Wars for DS. They haven't done a damn thing with Nintendo. They're trying LA Noire. It's going to be interesting to see if they don't sell, then they're going to be in the same boat with the Switch. If they do sell, then you're going to see developers put effort in because to get games on the Switch because there's money there. That's just how money talks. And the thing about the Switch too is that even though, yes, it's less powerful, obviously, than the PC or even the base PS4 and Xbox One. Like anyone who says that it's on par with them doesn't know what the hell they're talking about. It's easier to get the games whittled on there. It's not as tough to port the games over as it was on the Wii U. So that may be why
it's more modern architecture. But
yes.
3.5 gigs of RAM is still 3.5 gigs of RAM. You know what I mean? Or like a game like anything using the Frostbite Engine 3, you know, like the Battlefields, or I don't see those games being able to be shrunk and ran on the Switch unless they have to be like the FIFA. They had to do a special version, which is costly. You know what I mean? For like developers, so, you know what I mean, third party, because this can't really run heights or what's the cry engines, and stuff. But you know the more graphically demanding engines from these companies. You know what I mean? But again, I'm gonna be honest with you. I kind of want them to fail. And hear me out. I want them to get their teeth kicked in because I miss the days, Rich, of the big three competing and battling out for our dollars. You know what I mean? Which I think is good for gaming. Even them taking the stage at E3, they do this whole little weird treehouse event, and just kind of weird to me. I'm like, I don't know who they're advertising.
Yeah, I wish they would kind of change their approach to how. I mean, the thing about the directs. I used to talk shit about them with that, like, oh, why aren't they on, being competitive with Sony? But it's funny now, Sony and Microsoft are kind of almost doing the same thing they're doing, and E3 is starting to teeter on how relevant it is. So but yeah, I wish they would have a little bit more mature approach to their presentations, because the whole Treehouse thing, I don't get it. Like, it's just weird to watch, to be honest with you.
Oh, well, all right. We can end it with this. I'm gonna move past Nintendo.
Okay.
I think maybe you may feel different, but I think Nintendo's biggest problem is that Nintendo of Japan makes the decisions for Nintendo of America, makes the decisions for Nintendo of Europe. What's cool or over there, like in Japan, they're not really online and kind of more like laid back a little bit. And here in the States and stuff, we're online, we're trash talking. Even like I said, the approach to the online gaming, the fact that I need a cell phone, like that baffles my mind.
No, I can't defend. Yeah, I won't defend.
And I'm like this, like if I want something to change, like I'll give you an example, not to get too deep here. With the back in the day, the Jim Crow stuff, black people couldn't ride in front of the bus, right? They were protesting, they were marching, and cool, they made a lot of noise, but no one really cared. It wasn't until they start spending their money did that law change. And if you want things to change, you have to affect the bottom line, which is the dollar. And I really don't believe Nintendo's going to get it together until like maybe they hit rock bottom. You know what I mean? Like this ain't working. You know what I mean? Like this ain't working. Like, you know what I mean? I still look at them as catering to a specific niche audience. But those that, like my wife, she likes Mario. You know what I mean? Which is cool. I'm a man of very little means. Say what you want, but I'm not spending $300 to play Mario. Yeah, Zelda looks cool. Even the fact that I can't no cloud storage. If I get, say, for God forbid, I get far in Zelda and my screen cracks, or I got to get a new system or something, all that's gone. Like that baffles my mind to me, Rich. Like I can't fathom that. You know what I mean?
They're getting enough. Yeah, I don't understand why that wasn't there at the gate, but they're getting enough shit now that I have a feeling in the somewhat near future, like not even a year from now, that's going to become a thing. Because, yeah, like that's what happened. I dropped my Switch. I got it replaced, which that wasn't an issue. That was fine. But yeah, I lost all my data. You can't get it back. So, yeah, but I like the Switch. I know it was a tough sell on me too. I was very skeptical about it.
What you have to have it. I understand it. You more of one of the bigger content creators to give you an opinion on something that you have to have it. I understand it. You know what I mean? You know, Rich, for what you do. You know what I mean? But but you said you are saying you enjoy it. Me personally, I don't ever catch the bus anywhere. I'm driving. I don't really be out in open. You know what I mean? So that I wouldn't even have it for the handheld aspects. I'm not really into, even though I did like the Vita and a couple of their fighting games like the Street Fighters and stuff. I don't really do the mobile gaming. I sit and play on my 4K TV with my feet up, you know, screaming at my wife and kids. That's what I do, right? But with that being said, you know what I mean? So I don't get, me personally, I'm not knocking those that like it. You know what I mean? I understand what I eat don't make you shit. But I wouldn't use it for the handheld portion of it. That wouldn't be, it'd be docked to the screen. You know what I mean? I just wish the console would have been a little bit more powerful. You know, I just like them in this weaker than consoles that came out in 2013. You know what I mean? And for the price tag that they're asking $300, because you're not really playing for the console tech. You're playing for other stuff that you don't need, like the extra stuff that come along with it that eats up at the price, the dock, this, that, and the other. You know what I mean? But like, we're gonna see a year, Rich. How we revisit this conversation?
We'll revisit in a year and see what happens. And like I'm telling you, a lot of it's going to be how the third-party games this holiday sell. They don't sell.
Do they have any big ones? What they got? Skyrim. Well, here's the thing. Will the Nintendo fans buy them? They didn't buy any third parties on the Wii U.
We'll see if they buy these. If they buy these, then other developers are going to jump on board. If they don't, then that's what I think EA is holding off for a year for. Or if the reason they're truly holding off is because they want to see sales numbers, they probably want to see how Bethesda's ports are going to do. They want to see how Rockstar's ports are going to do. If they do well, then they'll be like, all right, there's money there. We'll invest the money. If there's no money there, then yeah, the Switch will end up being in the same boat again. So it's going to be an interesting wait and see game.
All right. Next question. Moving right along. I ain't been spending that much time on Nintendo. Sorry, I got a lot of stuff I wanted to ask you. Good time. I recently spoke to the guy. DM'd him. He DM'd me back on Twitter. That's doing the Dreamcast 2 Project Sparta. Have you heard about it?
I heard about it. I thought that was fake though, or is it?
No. Let me bring up my Twitter here. I don't want to lie to man. I'm paraphrasing here, but yeah. But he's. I think Sega told him to come back with 35 signatures or something. I guess he wants to have the licensing to put their older games, whatever the case may be. But it's, if I'm not mistaken, according to the specs, it's more slightly more powerful than the PS4 Pro. In this climate right now, you have, I guess, basically the big two, Sony and Nintendo duking it out. And then you also have Atari with the, what do you call the Air box? What do we call it?
They're called the Atari box. That thing's going to be a train wreck.
Okay, well, we can. So I play this. Do you think the Spartan is, because they call in the Dreamcast with the Spartan now, the Sparta and the Air box or Atari box, I'm sorry, have a chance in today's gaming scene, the environment, what's going on there?
The Atari box, absolutely, positively, hell no, because all it is again, first off, they're doing like the Kickstarter thing again, so that just sends off the flags of vaporware.
Okay.
Secondly, what it sounds like it's going to be is just like another NVIDIA Shield, that like the one that you hook up to your TV. How many more companies need to do that, and that they don't sell to have another one come out? So the Atari box, like if you look into it, there's red flags all over that thing. I just do not. I'll be surprised if it comes out to market, and if it does, it's just it's not going to.
I heard the asking price, or what of course it was $300.
Yeah, and they admitted that it's not as even powerful as the base Xbox and PS4, and then you're going to ask the same price because it has wood grain on it. Just stop. Yeah. Just stop it. Like, no. Now with the Dreamcast, if it's actually gonna come to fruition, maybe they'll have like a 3% chance because the name Sega will be on it.
Yeah, I don't know. That's when they want the name attached to it. You know what I mean? Whether Sega makes games for it or not, and whether they have to, how you say, I don't think they're gonna spend anything as far as making hardware, but just to have the license, the name, Dreamcast or Sega, to get some of those older games, on there. I think that's what they're going for. But I if I'm not mistaken, it's going to be an open source So that's no good because they're gonna like say if Sega license their game, they're gonna be able to make some money off those games. If it's open source, you can download the games from anywhere and they not get a damn dime from it, right? If I'm not mistaken. You know, one of those torrent sites or something. But
And one of the things with consoles, whether you like the walled garden or not, is that the walled garden, like that's why you have the game is officially licensed by Microsoft or
yeah,
officially licensed by Sony or whatever the case may be. You have something open source that means that anyone could like put whatever shovel whatever shit they want
yeah,
to on
pretty
it.
much.
It's just I don't know. I mean, is now someone else is making the console and Sega's just slapping their name on it? I don't know that much about it at all, to be honest with you. That's what's happening. Like someone.
Hold on. I mean, I don't like I want to lie to the guy.
Okay.
I asked him to come in. He said, "Yeah, from now." Hold on, I don't know if this. Hold on, let me share my screen with you guys. We can look at it together. But present to everyone. Here we go. Bam.
Let's see.
This is the site home. From what I hold on. From what he said, look. This is the specs here that he's aiming for. You see it?
4 GB GeForce GPU. All right, which 1 TB storage, 16 GB of RAM. Okay, which it sounds like a mid-range gaming PC. Okay.
Yeah. More, and
Not bad.
But he said originally, like I said, was just supposed to come out before. I mean, a couple years we heard about the Dreamcast 2. He went back to the drawing, but that's from South Africa, if I'm not mistaken. And Sega told him to come back with 35,000 signatures. Now, at the time, I seen the story about last month. He was about at 33,000, so I'm quite sure he has far surpassed that. So I don't know. Like I reached out to him. He said he stay in contact with me by email. He has yet to get back to me. You know what I mean? So, but from what I was reading, this was a open source, thing. And so if Sega, this was the old one. This is a new one here. If Sega was to come on board with this, or here's some more specs here.
I think it's ugly.
Yeah. Here, this is I guess a demo. This or what they're gonna have 2 back USB 0.0, 6 button control.
What the hell are they gonna have it's basically literally just a PC.
Yeah.
Like Thunderbolt you have when you want to hook up like an external graphics card. Okay.
Yeah, you know what I mean? And this was open source OS, you know what I mean? This is with Sega, they will make this a proprietary closed source. We're building a prototype with final here.
Oh, so this isn't in theory an official Sega system yet.
No,
they're working out a deal. Okay.
Yeah. You see there, you know what I mean? But he said Sega told him to come back with 35,000 signatures, which I'm quite sure he has far surpassed since then, you know what I mean? And they had also a demo of 4K Sonic running in maybe some fan made thing. I don't know. But here's the thing, right? As far as Sega, and I've seen you cover this in past, and Sega they were right there. Like Sega, was really, especially the Genesis, was really giving Nintendo just as good as they was giving, and the Super Nintendo was more powerful, right? But remember, Mortal Kombat had the blood, and so it was crazy. I didn't realize Nintendo was that strict back then. So I got that Mortal Kombat. Like, where's my blood at? I was pissed off, right? But looking back then, like I said, Sega went from the Genesis to the 32X to the Sega CD to the what was after that? The Saturn to the Dreamcast. All within like 2 years. It was just too much hardware, like too much. I couldn't keep up. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, that's you're right. That's basically what was the
about 2.5 years. They went from, Yeah, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off. Yeah, you was about to say?
Yeah, it was the nail in Sega's. Like, and the sad thing was the last official console they made, the Dreamcast, was an amazing console. Everyone just lost so much faith in Sega. You know what I'm saying? So
you know what? And maybe you may feel different. And this one leads to what I'm gonna say next. I think what was the big nail in the coffin for Sega, believe it or not, is that EA didn't get on board. This is at the height of.
No, that's true.
Madden was like, Duty and Destiny. Like Madden, I mean, still big, but it's not like it was back then. Madden and NBA Live, and even though Sega had their own 2K visual concepts, they had their own 2K sports, it wasn't the Madden and it wasn't the Live, you know what I mean? And then it was crazy. I remember me walking to EBX Games or EB Games, and I didn't even know that. Like, I've always been a gamer, but I follow a little bit more now. I'm watching with the news and stuff. I walked into the EB Games, Midland Funko Land, I'm sorry, and I didn't even know Sony was making a console. You know what I mean? I seen the Sony. And I was a big Genesis fan. I seen the Saturn. Back then Sony's name was like the Apple, like that was like the Hachi Tachi 2000. So I
Yeah.
picked the
No.
PlayStation. It was 350. I believe it was 300 or 350. It was 300, I believe. Then I had to get the I had to come back and get the RF unit to play it on channel 3. You know what I mean? It came with one controller. But I even though I ended up getting this Sega Saturn, but I picked the PlayStation first. And now, even back then, I was hearing that the Sega Saturn was so hard to develop for them, as far as the PlayStation. And even though
Yeah.
the Saturn was more powerful, but even though the PlayStation was a lot easier to code for back then, you know what I mean? And then I believe, like I said, you know, I think maybe the nail really was in the Dreamcast coffin that they launched a year before PlayStation, and they
Yeah.
didn't have so Sony's big success was having a DVD player. Like that was huge for them. The cheapest DVD player. I started buying DVD then in was it in 2000 because I got a PlayStation that had a DVD player. You know what I mean? But what
That
I'm
was a
saying,
big that was big back then. Yeah, that was huge. And it was and the funniest thing, it wasn't just EA. Like, okay, Namco had Soul Calibur, which was brilliant for the Dreamcast.
yes,
But they didn't really come out with other games. I think Namco only came out with
Spartan. I think so. They came out Spartan. Was Spawn. I think they made the Spawn game. I think that was them that made the Spawn game.
did they made the Spawn game for the Dreamcast?
Yeah, I believe it was them. Namco. I
So
believe. Don't quote me
the
on
third party support for the Dreamcast started to diminish very quickly, and it sucks because that was a really good system. And yeah, it was DVD was such a big thing back then, and
that. They
the
didn't have it.
PS2
Mhm.
being the first affordable DVD player, or one of the first affordable
I
ones.
got
That
it in
was
everybody's home. That was huge. That right there was like, you know, like that was like the equivalent of having the VCR back in the day. That was like, oh, I can rewind it back and I can stop it right here and I can look. Like that blew my mind. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
geez, you know, that was a huge thing for Sony was having that. But let me again, I can ask you a question. Like I said, I'm not gonna have you here too long. I know you got things to do. But two more questions. I'm gonna skip the whole VSPS the VR thing. Did you get your chance to get your hands on the Xbox One X?
Yes, I do. We're actually we're both going to unbox that right after this. Yep.
Okay, all right. So I'm not going to hold you long. Now, question again. I'm gonna say this right, and this is I own everything. Even though you know I prefer the Xbox, but I'm a PlayStation. I mean, I prefer the Xbox, but I have play on everything, right? I just
Mhm.
prefer the Xbox ecosystem. My friends are there, Xbox Live, right? But I bought a Pro, right? And I remember, but you may not know, but I know somebody that when I said know somebody, they told me that these new consoles was coming out before they were announced. And now, and again, I think I remember you would have probably one of the ones too, the same DirectX 12 was not gonna do shit for the Xbox One. And I was the same guy that told me about that, told me about the DirectX 12, right? So very, very, very credible source. I met the guy just doing YouTube, right? Make a long story short. So I was always very, very pro, you know what I mean? Like for it, you know what I mean? Project Neo, you know what I mean? We're talking about 4.2 teraflops in the console. That's a lot of mustard on the hot dog, right? Let's be
Yep.
clear this right. So when I got the Pro, I was expecting a huge leap in visuals, you know what I mean,
And it
graphics,
didn't
you know what I
happen.
mean. And I've always said this, and I'm not, flip flopping. I've always said that resolution doesn't give you better graphics; it gives you a sharper image, but it's the textures and the shaders. So again, when you're talking about
Which is
4.2
true.
teraflops, which in theory is twice as powerful as the PS4 Slim or normal, right? And all I got was a bump in resolution. My TV is going to upscale to 4K anyway, but I look maybe Sony kind of I say put themselves in the corner because remember this, it wasn't a fanboy channel that said this. It was Sony that came out and said that 1080p makes you a better gamer. Like literally, like Yoshida said, 1080p makes you a better gamer. That's some shit D crap gamer would have said or something. That's some some real live fanboy shit right there, right? So that kind of sparked the whole thing. I remember Rich, you had your thing about both games are going to be 720p, right? Remember that whole thing with you. But even when I knew myself that maybe there was some bullshit here, and I'm not dealing with the tinfoil hat here. I remember IGN did the review of the Xbox version of Call of Duty, and they did the PlayStation one, right? And they
Mhm.
gave the edge to the PlayStation version because it was in 1080p. But both versions wasn't that you was wrong, Rich, but both versions were set with 20p. It didn't become 1080p to after the patch, right? And which thing launched after the game came out. So both versions they played of the game was 720p, right? I'm like,
Yeah.
but no one really called them out for that. But
Yeah.
again, I got the Pro, and what we got was a resolution bump, not really better graphics. The X comes out. Have you played it yet?
I have not, but one
Oh,
thing I'm seeing that's a very good sign
Rich,
for the
Rich,
Xbox One X. What's up?
Rich.
You like
My
it?
God.
Well, here's the thing that's working in Microsoft's favor right now.
Yeah.
If you look at what Digital Foundry is doing, um, they're showing that even third-party games are looking better for the X.
Yes.
Like in there,
Yes.
you have Shadow of War looks significantly better.
Yes.
A big thing, and one thing that Microsoft did that was smart is they added extra RAM. It's 12 gigabytes, and that was why. See, the thing with the PS4 Pro version is they had to have the regular textures, so you have this sharper image, even though it's still not.
They can either choose between the two. They either have a higher resolution or better graphics. I mean, better textures. They can't do both
because there's not enough RAM. So you're seeing another game, Evil Within 2, looks better. The only game I'm here, and they had Diablo, which I'm kind of surprised the PS4 Pro can't run Diablo even better than it does. Diablo looks significantly better on the X than it does. So even though right now there's not the games from Microsoft themselves, even though they're trying to focus on first party, here's the thing, like I said in a few of my videos, the market that the Pro and the X are going for, these are people that are going to pay attention to what third party in every game looks like.
Okay.
And if this keeps happening where games on the Xbox One X look better,
graphically,
it doesn't matter that it's $100 more, because that consumer's like, look, man, I'll spend the extra. I got a 4K HDR TV. I'll spend that extra $100 if games like Shadow of War look that much better, because look at the Digital Foundry video. It's not just a small difference; it's a big difference.
Yeah, like I said, I'm a console gamer. You've been gaming on PC, this is no fanboy stuff here. I have a PC also. I just like the simplicity of consoles. I don't like the, sometimes I got to patch games. I ain't with all that stuff there. But making a long story short, what I'm saying is that, Rich, I wasn't expecting that huge of a leap, because I got a chance to play the X. Microsoft had the events at Best Buy. I'm not a big Forza fan. But I went to my cousin's house. He got it a little early. He went to the little mom and pop stores downtown Newark, New Jersey, and they got it early. You know what I mean? He paid $600, but he had it a few days early, right? And I was sick as a dog that damn day. I remember my wife drove me down there, and he has a KS8000, one of Samsung flagship TVs from last year, 4K HDR. And I saw Gears of War, 4K, 30 with his textures. Literally, and it made me sound like a bold statement. Like, I literally said that was the best game that I've seen graphically this generation. I was not expecting that. I mean, I know that that far, like, it's not going to be on every game. It's all depends on the developer, but that's just a small clue of what the console can do. Like that, literally, Rich. Like I said, you're in for a treat. Like, my God, my God. Like, I'm not just saying it to say it. And maybe you may be used because you're playing on PC. You know what I mean? And you're used to seeing it like that. But from a console, it literally felt like Microsoft moved the generation without saying anything. You know what I mean? It's that huge of a leap. Even with Madden, like, I got Madden. Madden looks amazing. Like, you know what I mean? And I'm at this limbo now where I got so many games I just want to try. Injustice too. It's another one. You know what I mean? I'm
hearing even three, like my friend Dan got an X, and he was playing the original Assassin's Creed. And they did and he's playing it in 4K. He said, you have no idea how crispy it looks. So Microsoft placed a bet that everyone was skeptical of, and it seems to be working, meaning that they were like, okay, we're going to, like, Sony was like, we're giving you a Pro. We're not going to give you the 4K Blu-ray drive, which, fine. I get why they did it, because they wanted to keep the price down. But we're giving you a system that, and there are some games that do have other graphical benefits, like Horizon Zero Dawn. If you have played on the Pro, they do the 4K checkerboard. They up the lighting and things and textures and all that. But Microsoft was like, I really kind of consider the Xbox One X a next-gen system. So it might work in their favor, because I'm telling you, man, if it keeps coming out that third-party games consistently look better, noticeably better on the Xbox One X, than that bet that Microsoft placed that a lot of people were skeptical of, that made the price more, may have been a smart bet. Because
okay. But let me ask you two more questions and let you go.
Sure. Oh, you're fine. You're good.
All right. With that being said, now, as far as them kits, I don't. This is not. All right. Here's the thing. All right, move. Now, I know Microsoft is a software company, and they spend billions of dollars into the API, right? You got trust me, I didn't damage control enough on some of my fanboy arguments. With Windows, with UWP, they can make one game with one code, it can scale up or scale down. As far as what I'm hearing on the Sony side of things, it's more like two codes. You know what I mean? They say it's only like 1% of, you know what I mean, that they have to go like 1% difficulty going out to making a game to run on the Pro. You know what I mean? With the PlayStation 5, because it's going to come, I don't expect Sony to just get their teeth punched in for long. How long do you think this generation is going to last? Because we did get what you call mid-gen refreshes. And are we still dealing with generation when Sony comes out with the successor? Do you expect it to be fully backwards compatible and going
Well, I
forward?
think it will. I think it will, because here's what's going to happen from here on out, and that's why
Yes,
the PS4 and the Xbox One were designed. They're basically computers. They have
yes,
x86, 64-bit processors, blah 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 blah. Yeah, I think everything backwards compatibility is always with Microsoft and Sony from here on out going to be a thing, because even though it's like kind of like when you upgrade your PC, you could still play all of your other games when you
yes, sir,
upgrade
yes,
it,
sir,
but
yes,
it's the
sir,
same
yes, sir.
hardware.
Yeah, I've
So
been
I
saying that
think
for a while.
I think backwards compatibility from here on out, unless they for some stupid reason make it not happen on purpose, is going to be a thing. I hope that we don't see a true next gen leap from either Sony or Microsoft until like 2019. Because personally, I will feel jilted with the PS4 Pro, even though it's not as big of a jump as the X is. You made me buy this mid-gen console only for it to be out in the market for about 2 years. Like, say they come out with the PS5 next year, people will feel like people will feel shafted. And if they ever try to do anything like the Pro again, when they say they come out with the PS5 Pro,
Yeah.
people will be like, kind of like what happened with Sega. They're like, you told me that this console is going to hold me over for a few years, and you barely gave me 2 years. I'm not buying this thing again. So I hope, that it's till 2019, and I'm hoping that the X and the Pro will make that, because it'll just, you spend the money and then all of a sudden, now here's the next gen system, but you just
Yeah, that's what I was asking. Are we still going to, like you said, as far as now listen. Now again, I don't want to just like I'm shit on the Pro. The spec wise, the Pro is a very very capable console. More or less. I don't know if it's the software side of things or what's holding developers back. You know what I mean? And maybe Sony got to. I'll be honest with you, I can't really tell the difference from native 4K or upscale 4K. I'm not that picky, but with the casual gamer can tell the difference from that. And I think maybe this maybe worked against the Pro. And it's also Sony said you get HDR even on the Slim, so that wasn't a huge selling point for them. When the average Joe Smo walk into the Best Buys or whatever, and they see the Pro and whatever, and it's not that big of a leap. It's not, so why I gotta spend 400? I get basically the same game for 250, on the same console. And like I mean, the diehardest enthusiasts, but we are a very very small piece of potato in this head pot of stew here. You know what I mean? As far as the casual, and it wasn't a huge leap. You know what I mean? And again, I thought like we talking about again, this specs on paper is 4.2 teraflops in the console in the closed environment. That's a lot of mustard on a hot dog, especially going from we just had 1.8 and 1.3 with the original Xbox and the PS4 being 1.8. So I was expecting I want to do a huge leap in visuals. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
But you had some games that came out at launch that ran better on the regular PS4 than the Pro. Now, do you equate that to maybe Sony's with their software, the APIs, or like?
I equate that to maybe developers not, doing what they needed to do to get the games up to snuff. It's kind of like one example of that happening on the X right now is Titanfall 2,
Yes,
where there's no reason that it
they just
should
put
be
out a patch.
running
I don't know what the
crappier
patch
than the
fits, but
Pro
they just put out a
version,
patch. They
and
just released a patch.
they patched it already.
Yeah, they just released one. I was reading on Twitter. They just released a patch.
Okay, but before the patch, it was actually running crappier on the X than the Pro. So I think that was part of it too. But you are right, is that in terms of more of a significant jump that where you actually see it on the screen. Yeah, obviously the Xbox One X has that now, and I'm happy to see that third-party games are looking better on the X, because that was what my fear was, is that developers would be like, the PS4 has a bigger install base. Let's just
I
it
remember.
over.
Yeah, you saying that. Yeah, that
I was very concerned about that, and I'm glad to see that not happening. And I think the reason it's not happening is that especially the Xbox, but the PS4 too, it's basically just a PC too, is that developers like, all right, we already got because they come out with 99% of the games for the PC too, minus exclusives, obviously. So they have the game coming out for all three platforms. So like, okay, we got the PC version. If we need to make a couple changes, we'll put it on the X, and then if we need to make more changes because it's less powerful, we'll put it on the Pro. So I think that's why we're going to see the games actually looking better, because the developers don't have to put any more time in, because they already have the max settings version for the PC. All they got to do is maybe whittle it down a little bit to make it run on the X. So games will actually look better, because developers don't have to really put any time into it to make it look better. And that's a good thing for people who bought the Pro, because now they're going to get their money's worth out of it.
Yeah. Like I said, you have yet to try it. So I guess, like I said, going forward. Now I know Sony hasn't. I mean, I should say, as far as backwards compatibility, and I listen. I don't want to be. I don't really buy new consoles to play old games. I'm not knocking those that do, But do you see Sony's future titles, them allowing you to play? You know, because they do have PS Now, which is not really, I guess it didn't really take off.
No, it's
Uh,
streaming. Yeah.
I look at it like this. I think it will be beneficial because these companies really don't make money on the hardware, it's on the software sales. Just say if Microsoft releases something successor to the Scorpio, whenever it comes out in a few years,
Mhm.
and they have newer titles, right? I don't think Microsoft will just lock them down to that newer title, that newer console, because if imagine they can put out Halo whatever 6 when the new console comes out, and the people that have the X can play it also, that's a bigger install base. You know what I mean? So again, they would make much more money, you know, on the software side of things if they don't tie it down to a specific platform. You know what I mean?
It,
Like,
it's
how do you feel
more
about that?
possible. It's more possible now because, again, because the consoles are like PCs. You know, someone could have a budget rig for
Yeah,
$200,
you have a 5 to
play it
7.
PC and play it. They'll have to play it at low settings. They could play it, and then they could have another PC where they upgraded the graphics card to a 1080 Ti, and they could play it at max settings, and that will make consoles being backwards compatible, or even just having multiple different versions of a console being able to play the same game feasible, because all you have to do is just flick that switch. Instead of on the whatever the next Xbox is, you have max resolution textures. On the X they'll be medium, and then if you play it on the original one, or the S, it'll be on low or whatever. And that's all they got to do. So there's more of a chance. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but there's more of a chance now, because even with next gen systems, it's not like they're going to change, anything. So like every time a system used to come out, it was
Yes.
totally different than the previous system. The
Yeah.
PS3 was totally different, even though they had backwards. But the only reason they had backwards compatibility
I mean,
in the PS3 because they had basically had a PS2 inside of it, and it made it really expensive, so they got rid of it. But now it's not going to be that anymore. It's just going to be, like you're upgrading your PC, so they can just make the games work on 20 different consoles and just change the settings. Like if like when you play a game on a PC, you got to change your settings.
Okay, this will be my last question, which I'm gonna promise get you out of the hot seat.
You're all good, man.
All right, last question, right? At the start of the generation, right? Whereas Microsoft, now this all is subjective. Microsoft had more AAA exclusives, and Sony had more, they had the better version of the multiplayer, to be fair, and I mean, and a lot of indie support, right? Going forward now, Sony has that appeal to me. I know all is subjective. Maybe not be the biggest, I say cliche Xbox guys. I'm not a big fan of Halo. I'm not interested in Sea of Thieves. State of Decay 2 has my interest, and maybe Forza Horizon 4. I know that's coming out next year. And I've never been a big Crackdown fan, but maybe they can sell me on the multiplayer, right?
Yeah.
Where far as Sony has God of War, what's Spider-Man, which I can't wait to play, No Days Gone, and I even sold me on T-Human. And I don't the crap that they got behind Team. I love the way Sony handled that. This is a game made by adults for adults. I thought that was awesome how they nailed it then, right? Now, where here's like I said, no longer will Sony have the better version of the multiplats, but Microsoft will. But Sony has some exclusives. Do you think that I understand exclusives matter, you know what I mean? But I don't in this climate there's not one AAA exclusive that's going to outsell a AAA multiplat. You know what I mean? What I mean by that, well, you look at what's the biggest exclusives on Microsoft side? Halo, right? Halo and Gears, and Destiny on the Xbox outsold Halo, right?
Yeah.
So going forward, do you think that would hurt Microsoft more, or you know what I mean, or they can just get by for a little while? And listen, I'm not saying it's cool. I buy everything, but do you think they would be okay with just having the better version of the multiplats, or Sony still going to?
Like I know Phil Spencer said they're going to start focusing more now that they got the X out and they have the hardware there. They want to focus on exclusive IPs again, but it'll definitely help them, because here's the thing: if you are that audience going for the X or the Pro and you see the games look better, you're that hardcore consumer, you will spend the extra $100 for the better looking game. So if that pattern keeps up where the games continue to look better for the X, that'll definitely help. And the thing is, too, here's the reality of it, too. And this is coming from a guy who prefers PC, and I won't apologize for that. The reality of it is what the Xbox One X offers, unless you get parts that fall off of a truck or whatever, you're not building a PC that could play games at the same level, at the same price as that right now. Probably they'll be the same way for like the next at least year and a half. Okay. So if you're just gaming, you're getting a better deal buying the Xbox One X. Now you could go into how you have to pay for online, blah, 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 blah. But in terms of raw horsepower, you can't build a PC right now that could do the same thing for the same price.
Optimization
Actually cannot do it yet. So I see a lot of people who are like PC elitists trying to damage control that.
Maybe you can shed some light. I've never seen really PC guys really insert themselves so much in the console war. Like I'm old school. I remember the days of who's better, Mario or Sonic. I think it's very silly. You know, you're more of a PC guy to compare.
Well, they're doing that with the Switch too. Like, because I'm saying I'm enjoying Doom on the Switch, and like, oh, it's only 30 frames per second and 720p. I'm like, yeah, man, I know. Look, I have a PC. I could play Doom at 4K at 140 hertz. I get it, but I'm enjoying it. And they're doing it's everyone has to damage control for something. And I see the PC elitist damage control. Oh, I could go look all over eBay for 6 months and build a PC that's just as good as the Xbox One X. I'm like, right now, one, no, you can't. And two, you want to spend all that time doing that, go ahead. Other people will just buy the system and have fun with the games. And again, I prefer PC and I still will. But I just know I'm realistic and I'm not an elitist. And I know right now Microsoft has it down lock in terms of what it's capable of on the gaming side.
Okay, look, I know I said it was the last question, but I forgot. I wanted to ask you again. Phil Spencer. Your opinion. Now, on my platform, I've been very critical of Phil. What I mean by that is, I understand, and Phil doesn't think I like him. Phil, you're all right with me, trust me. That I have been very critical of some of the decisions that he made. I can say this, and I want to get your opinion on what the job that he's doing, right? I always ask people, why do you sing Phil Spencer's praise? Because, the game-wise, exclusive-wise, whether it's Rise, have a cult following, Sunset Overdrive, the Quantum Breaks, all that came under Donnie D. Donnie D wrote the check for that, right? But said under Phil, we lost true Xbox exclusives. We don't really have any third-party deals, marketing-wise anymore. And with the play anywhere games, going to PC. I spoke to the original godfather of the Xbox platform, Seamus Black, that I talked to him from time to time, and they said they had this conversation with Bill Gates back in the inception of the original Xbox. Microsoft always had made little games with Zoo Tycoons or, those games that they had back then on PC. And you had the console thing, right? And how can Bill wanted to have a Windows platform in every, the living room, right? How can they merge the two audience? And he said back then that, we're just two different consumers. Whereas PC guys want to look at a game and maybe put a bunch of dildos in the game, whatever the case may be. In console guys don't care about any of that. They don't care about the frame. They just want to go out there and play the game. But no, PC guys don't like to feel restricted. They can do whatever they want. We just don't care about. We're just two different demographics. Do you think it was a mistake? Because I am from the old school that you have to leave some value there on your platform. And maybe like I said, I'm a fan of the Steve Ballmer, thing and those guys there. If you want Xbox products, you got to buy Xbox, stuff. You know what I mean? Like, how do you feel about that? And how do you feel is doing as a job? You know what I mean?
I'm mixed. Well, I think Phil Spencer, he took the sinking ship that Don Matrick was running, and he did turn it around. He made I think it was a smart move for them to dump the Kinect as fast as they did. I know a lot of people were look, I get it. I bought the original Xbox One with the Kinect, and it was the same price as the X is now. I put the money down, and then all of a sudden you could buy a cheaper one without it. But he cut the fat out and put the Xbox brand in the right direction. And I mean, there should have been more focus on exclusives. I don't think anybody will disagree with me with that. But, one thing I'm kind of confused on and mixed on is I don't know how I feel about every single exclusive game for the Xbox also being on PC, and this is coming from a guy who's pro PC.
Yeah.
Because it's kind of like, I understand they're trying to future-proof themselves, because I think Microsoft sees Xbox being just not just a piece of hardware. They see it being a brand, but it kind of dilutes, like, all right, man, I could, why am I going to get an Xbox, if I could buy those games for the PC too? And I'm kind of confused on that. Like, I get what they're doing. I get why they're trying it out. And I get that they're trying to expand the Xbox brand and future-proof it. But at the same time, it's kind of like they're shooting their own hardware in the foot by doing that.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, because you understand. I understand they do make their money off software, and the more software they sell, But just being honest, by them putting Gears, I've been playing Gears of War a lot lately. That's my new religion. I ran across two people on PC, and I've been playing it faithfully about 5-6 months now, literally. I think it did more harm than good. By them putting Forza on PC, they didn't skyrocket the sales, or even them putting Quantum Break. And I like Quantum Break. I think it got a bad rap holder
Yeah,
for
I
no
do too. I
resolution.
like Quantum
You
Break
know what I
too.
mean?
It's
You know what I mean?
underrated.
But and I'm just saying, I think again, it do more harm than good. And then, like I said, I don't know if you saw the Gamescom. The Gamescom was horrible. Like that was like that. I compared that to one of the Nintendo's directs, right? But then the following day, they have a better showing for a PC exclusive Age of Empire. I'm not into RTSs by any means. That's not my thing. They had a better showing of a PC exclusive than they did for what they did for promoting or showing the X, right? And which I don't understand. Here it is, the console side of things. Their games go day and date with the PC, but PC gets to keep their own exclusives. Like, am I missing something here? Like, you know what I mean? Like, you know, and you
Yeah,
talking from the rich. I've been here since day one. I was a beta tester, my God, for Xbox Live. I got the Xbox No One beta tester for Xbox Live in 2002. So I would say that I bleed green. But I think, in my opinion, this is the last thing you can close. I think they forgot what their core and what we like, even down to their showing in 2013.
I think what they're doing with the whole PC thing where, oh, you buy the game on the Xbox, you get it on the PC too. I think it's too early to do. Secondly, I can't stand the Microsoft store on PC anyway.
I heard,
So like the store is garbage on PC. So it's like I don't even want to deal with it. So there's like times like, man, if the game is only out, like if they're not going to have it on Steam and they're just going to have it on the Microsoft store or the Xbox, I'll buy it on the Xbox because that's how much I don't want to deal with their store. Yeah, I don't know. I think again, I understand why they sat down in like a board meeting and said, hey, we should have the games on both platforms, but I think it was too early. I think they should have waited. Probably they should have maybe started doing this maybe with the next gen system, having they do the Xbox Anywhere thing. Because right now, I think it just leaves people thinking like almost like they're jaded, like they're not getting, you know, what they should be getting out of their Xbox if there's other ways to play the games.
Yeah, well put, well put. Well, like I said, I had you here for an hour in the hot seat, Rich.
It's
Thank
all
you for
good.
coming on.
No,
Anything you want to add? Before we get the hell about it that we didn't cover that you may want to say? A shameless plug, anything?
no, I'm just, you know, it's just funny to see with the Xbox One X, see a bunch of PC elitists as salty as they are. Like it's so.
Okay, all right. Look, okay, we can close with this. Why I don't why I don't understand as far as the PC side of things. It seems like they hate more on the Xbox platform than they do on the PlayStation platform. Why is that? Or am I just
I haven't seen that. I've seen that. I've seen the hate on both sides. Like
on the Pro? I haven't seen the Pro get as much hate. Like, look,
well, because they're not because the elitists are not threatened by the Pro. The Pro, they know they like. I did a computer called the Gaming Station.
Yes,
It was an old school computer where I just plopped the 1060 and I changed the power supply, and it was holding its own against the PS4 Pro, and it was it was not that much more money than it. So no one really felt threatened because it's like, oh yeah, I could go out to a parts bin and build a machine that could beat the Pro, but people can't do that right now with the Xbox One X.
Yeah, first of all, custom.
And you can't do that with the Xbox One or X right now, so they're getting salty. You know what I mean? Just like they're salty that Doom is actually good on the Switch. So
I don't know what the hell that's about. Yeah, but
the same people salty at the X are salty that Doom's actually fun on the Switch. So there you go.
I don't think the console war or anything will ever go anywhere. I know Phil said he's not a fan of it, but there will always. That's just the nature of man. Again, and whether you go to those HD forums, I remember Blu-ray versus HD DVD and LG versus Samsung or BMW versus Mercedes Benz. That's just the nature of man. That this once I guess thumb their nose and validate my purchase is better than yours. I listen. Trust me, I own everything. But again, there's nothing wrong to have a preference. I more or less prefer the Xbox. You might prefer the PlayStation more, which is cool. You know what I mean? I have a couple. If you rich, if you blessed to have another child or your wife, you can probably have your favorite child, whether you choose to admit it now. I have mine. I make no crawls about that. You know what I mean? It's nothing wrong with preferring something more. You know what I mean? To have your own biases. I mean, like it is. Like I said, Rich, I thank you for coming by, my man, swinging by my dog shit channel. I appreciate it. I give my man Rich a round of applause. This has been in the work for about a month and a half now.
I'm sorry about the last time me ducking out, but schedules were crazy. So
hey, Rich, it's called life. When things come in, you got kids. Trust me, I know. I didn't fuss about it. I'm about to do a video on Rich Check USA Exposed. I know. Listen, I didn't tell. Like I said, I'm gonna say this before we get the hell off the air, right? With this internet stuff, what I've noticed, like sometimes it get a little weird. Like, question, you got your fair
Yeah, yeah, it gets a little weird. That's an understatement, but anyway.
you know what I mean? And even like myself, as far as, you know, it's the things that I'm a pedophile and all this wild, crazy shit, right? I've never experienced this shit in my life. But I'm not a weirdo. Like, I remember one day I told you late, and I said, Rich, get at me. I'm signing to your account. I don't know how the hell I got to your account. But somebody else would have took this, put all your business all over YouTube and all types of wild shit. I ain't with all that, man.
Well,
you know?
the thing is, man, is that like even people that I've had issues with, like you let it go. It's just the fucking internet. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And my thing is always too, like I've said with someone else, like if you keep it on the internet, you could be, as long as what you're saying, you aren't slandering me and saying that, like, you know, like you said, people were saying that you were a pedophile. Like, that's crazy.
Certain lines have been crossed, but you know, about my children, like, so you don't like you see what I'm saying. Now you got a little different.
As long as you don't cross certain lines, and
what you say about me, I can care less. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and that's how it has. You know, but yeah, it's the internet's weird. Like if you, as your channel gets bigger, man, it'll get weirder too.
Hopefully, man. What you coming on? I appreciate it, my man. For you
no
swinging by, I'm forever indebted. I'm not worthy. Ladies and gentlemen, thank my man Rich for swinging by. He's been a cool dude, man, since I've known him. I've always been 100, man. I appreciate it, man.
No problem. Thank you, Zaire, for having me on, and everyone have a good night, all right?
Yeah, you got it, man.
All right, bye-bye.
Yeah.